All right, now I'm just going to start with some basics of some of the methods. Who here has ever done any sort of playing around with sound or any sort of stuff like that? Who here is interested in whether it's being music or sound effects or whatever? Got a few people here? Cool. A couple of questions. You guys mainly PC-based or Mac-based? Yeah, and this is one of the interesting things. The music film industry generally are all Mac-based. However, the game industry is pretty much PC-based. So it's probably good to have skills on PC. I'm not saying that if you're on Mac that you can't do stuff. But what I'll be showing you today is PC-based. One of the things I found when I started playing around with sound and etc. is I was always looking for the magic buttons. You know, I'd look at look at all these buttons up here. It's like crazy like special effects. They're going to make my sounds really really cool. And I started playing around with files and playing around with buttons and all this sort of stuff. And then found very quickly that when I pressed all the magic buttons, they weren't giving me the amazing, fantastic, awesome sound effects that I was expecting. And the reason why is because I was not understanding the process of what I was doing. And it actually took me quite some years before I really, really got to the point where I was understanding the simplest things that you can play around with are quite often the best. Now let's just say how much volume we've got in here. Awesome, that's perfect. All right. That is, it's not actually a letterbox. It sounds a little bit like somebody hitting a letterbox with a cricket bat. It's kind of the equivalent. I think I was on a farm, they had a whole bunch of junk on the farm, and they had like, you know those old metal boxes that you used to put food in, like the old biscuit tins and stuff like that you might have seen in movies. I think it was something like that. It was rusty, it was in a pile of junk, and I just went, cool, pointed a microphone at it and kicked it. Seriously, this is a lot of what I do is kicking things, breaking things, jumping on things or whatever, under controlled conditions. I don't just go out and smash stuff wherever I find it. But around the corner from where I'm living a few months back, there was a, like they were, building a whole bunch of new apartments, and they had one of those giant skips out the front, full of junk. It's going to be thrown away. And I looked in it and saying, oh, okay, they pulled down some of the old building. It's a pile of old bricks. Oh, look, some old windows. Went home, got my microphones, set them up around the skip, pointing into the skip, and picked up some bricks in the skip and just broke some of the glass in the skip. So harm done, 0. Mess, 0. You know what I mean? And this is something that you can do under certain circumstances. As long as you are controlled and you're not acting like an idiot. If anybody comes along and saying, what are you doing? It's like, I'm putting broken glass into a bin. Because that's what I was doing. It was already there. It was already going to be thrown away. You know, and sometimes you can actually, like if it's a junk pile and stuff like that, or you can sort of say to people, hey, do you mind if I take that? Because it's a junk pile, I'm going to go home and I'm going to hit it with a stick or whatever. You know, so as long as you're fairly responsible with what you're doing, and this is the thing. Think of it this way: I really, really love what I'm doing, as I said before. But one of the reasons why I get away with doing what I'm doing is because I'm considerate about how I do it. Right, the relationship I have now with some of these airfields, where I go and record things like helicopters and fighter planes and stuff like that, is because I contacted them and I very politely asked, hey, can I come here and do this? And hey, I want to make sure that I'm not doing anything wrong, so let me know where I can go and everything like that. And I built up a relationship over a few months to the point where the last time I was up there, I was standing on the wingtip of staying at the wingtip, sorry, not on the wingtip, but standing at the wingtip of the Spitfire when it stood up, when it started up. So I'm like, here, I can touch this plane. They're allowing me that close to it because I've shown them that I'm not a jerk, I'm not an idiot, I'm not irresponsible, and that means that I get to have just really cool time recording these sorts of things, because people sort of look at me and go, oh, okay, he's pretty cool, it looks like we can trust him to not do something stupid. And the other reason why I don't want to do something stupid is because when you're actually standing that close to a Spitfire that's starting up, something stupid can kill you. And dying, I don't think, is fun. I haven't tested it. I don't plan on it. So, if you want to test that theory, I'll let you do that in your own time. All right, so that's just one of the things of like, I've gotten away with doing some pretty crazy things, but generally I usually say to people, hey, I'm going to do this. So they know, oh, all right, well, that's cool. And the other thing is, having all the microphones and everything like that makes it look a little bit more professional than just, standing around. Like that little recorder I was using with you guys is just the portable one I carry around. Normally I've got a giant sort of furry microphone things. All right, so here we have Metal Box. Exciting? Yeah? Yeah, Metal Box, yeah. It's a fairly dull, boring sound. I freely admit that. However, this is the process that I use probably more than anything else. And it's one of the simplest processes you can use, and pretty much any sort of sound editing program will allow you to do this. Because what this process is exactly the same way as the guys who did Star Wars 30 years ago and did films even before that used to do their sound design stuff. And that basically is playing with the pitch. All right, so if we've got resample, which means if I slow it down, it'll get longer, and if I speed it up, it'll get shorter. So think about a guitar string. You're tightening the string, you're kind of making it shorter to make it higher pitched, and then you loosen it off, and it gets longer, and it gets lower. Same with your speakers. Your subwoofer on your home stereo is big, because it's producing big sound files, whereas little sound files out of the little speakers are usually high pitched. Okay, so there's all this relationship with things, and we'll look into that in a little bit more. But if we get this now and we go, all right, well, let's crank it down 200% and listen to our dull sound. It's now sounding like a big metal box. And I just made a box bigger and I didn't do anything. Okay, so it's still not an amazingly interesting sound, but at least now you're looking at it going, yeah, but maybe, you know, in my Doom 15 game, you know, where you walk up and you've got the big 44-gallon drums and you kick those over, this sound is probably a little bit more appropriate than the original one that we had. So instead of having to go out and record a 44-gallon drum, because, well, there's no 44-gallon drums near me, all of a sudden I've got a sound here that I can use for my 44-gallon drum. And if we go sort of further again, let's crank it down to 300. Dumpster, perfect, yeah. Now I don't have to have a dumpster, I already have dumpsters, but yeah, good, yeah. And this is the whole point. All of a sudden, our box is getting bigger. So all of a sudden, these things that we might want to have recordings of in our game that we can't get access to in real life, we don't have to get access to. All right, now if we go even further to the extreme. All right, now I'm actually going to process that one because I want to go further than this will allow me to. So I'm going to do that process, and this file is now longer. If I bring it back in here again and go, let's say a further 200, let's see where that goes. Captain, something just hit the hull of the ship. Oh boy, are we in trouble. So all of a sudden, our little metal box, our boring, nerdy little metal box has grown up into something fairly significant. Yeah, well, seriously, I mean, okay, if you were watching Battlestar Galactica and an asteroid hit the side of the Galactica and you heard this sound, you'd be like, yeah, I can live with that. That sounds pretty cool. And you notice now that just looped. How much longer it is. The sound is now taking 20 seconds to loop because it's getting longer and longer. Let's just keep going. Let's see how far we can go with this. At a certain point, it'll just get a bit messy because once you start to deform a sound too much, it starts to fall apart a little bit. But for the moment, let's see what 300% does. Yeah, so, you know, it's starting to distort here, so I think that's probably as far as you can take it. I'll go to 400 just to show you, but... That's not bad. I mean, you could still use it for an earthquake or thunder again, stuff like that. Yeah, you know, ocean's a good one as well. So, look at what we've done. One sound effect. One fairly ordinary metal box, and we've got a 44-gallon drum and a dumpster and the hull of a ship and a thunderclap, blah 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 blah. And what's more, we actually didn't go in the other direction. The other direction for this particular sound is not quite so great, but if we go in the other direction of, say, 10%, it's looping really quickly because it's now really short. But all of a sudden, it sounds like a tiny little piece of, yeah, exactly, your clappy monkey toy. So yeah, you know. So, but this is one of the reasons why the more time I spent playing around with sound, the more I'm like, oh, this is cool. You know, I can do just really, really silly things and really, really fun things with different sound effects. And all I've done here is pitch up or down. So the tools that I use most of the time to play with are pitch, time, and volume, making something louder or softer. And in fact, I'll show you, I want to show you how much difference volume makes.
What programs do you suggest
All right. Yeah, all right. That's a good time to ask that. If we're talking programs that you might pay for, this one that I use, this actually used to be called Cool Edit. It then got bought out by Adobe, and it's now called Adobe Audition. And Adobe Audition sort of Adobe added 1 or 2 features, and this is version 1.5, which I'm using here. They then decided to add a few more features, and then version 3, they completely screwed it up by changing the entire interface, and I just went, that's really stupid. So, Oh, they're probably trying to make it more like somebody else's program. And it's like, yeah, but I don't use that one, and the person who does use Final Cut's not going to come across because you made it look like it. So you're not gaining any more customers, and you've lost one. And probably more. Seriously, it's like, I mean, you guys probably don't drive, but I mean, think about it from the point of view of, somebody brings out a brand new car and they've swapped the brake and the accelerator pedal around. We're being new and innovative. No, you're being stupid. And this is actually one of the problems with software developers. Because they want you to continue buying new models, they decide they've got to change it and all this sort of stuff. So yeah, so I'm using Adobe Audition. I actually use this for about 90% of what I do in the sound library. It's really, really good, clean program for editing.
Would you use
Audacity? Now I was going to suggest that. Now, Audacity is not quite as good as Audition, but from your point of view, it's awesome because Audacity is free. All right, so if you want to write that down, I think it's A-U-D, yeah. So if you haven't used it, there are people here who have. Audacity, yes. As a free program, Audacity is excellent. It's really, really good. So yes, I would definitely recommend that. Question up there? SoundForge is very, very good. Now, I'm going to be really, really honest here and explain to you why I don't use SoundForge and why I use Adobe Audition, which was Cool Edit. All right? I'd heard about SoundForge when I was at university, so this is a long time ago, a long time ago. And one of my friends back then, like torrents didn't even exist back then, but one of my friends was kind of like, oh yeah, I can get you some software. We all know what I'm talking about. And I'm like, oh, SoundForge, yeah, I've heard SoundForge is really good, and I want to do audio editing. And he went away, he couldn't find SoundForge. He found me a copy of this program called Cool Edit. Now, you know what's really, really funny about that? All these companies that bitch and moan about piracy and all this sort of stuff, it was because I was given back then, a couple of decades ago, a pirate version of a piece of software. It's now the piece of software that I always use in my professional life. So the next time that somebody bitches and moans about pirating, they're not taking the entire equation. They're not thinking about the entire equation. It's the same as with games when they say, oh, you pirated a game, so we lost $100. They don't know that after you pirated it and you played it, you went, this is really cool, and you went out and bought it anyway. Well, but this is the whole point. I know people who will pirate things basically as samples. They'll look at it and they'll go, this is cool, and they'll go out and buy it. That's also true. You might not have bought it initially. That is also true. So SoundForge is a very, very good program. SoundForge is actually now made by Sony. Again, Sony did the same thing. They bought it out from Sonic Foundry, and Sony messed around with it, and SoundForge sort of went through this curve of nobody wanted it, and then they kind of picked it up. There is actually a program that I use that's made by the same people who also got bought out by Sony, a program called Vegas, which is a video editing program. It is excellent. Vegas is really, really good. Premiere, made by Adobe, is poo. I hate it. Don't use it.
I've used Vegas before, and what would you say about Acid?
Acid is basically made by the same people, has a very similar sort of interface. Acid is designed for doing a loop-based music. I've used Acid. I haven't used it for quite some years. Acid is awesome. I really like Acid. Yeah. So yeah, Acid's good as well.
Adobe Soundbooth?
Soundbooth was... Well, no, it's not that. Soundbooth was on the computer. I teach at RMIT, and it was on the computers at RMIT, and we tried using Audacity for something, and somebody's computer, Audacity wouldn't work. So we said, oh, well, Soundbooth's on there, use that. And they tried it for 5 minutes and then called me over and said, oh, I don't know how to use this. And I looked at it and went, wow. And I tried working out how to use it. And this is one of the things, just as an aside, generally, I don't teach somebody how to use a piece of software. I'm not going to sit you down and say, here is how to use Adobe Audition, here's how to press all the buttons. That's useless. And any teacher who tries to teach you a particular piece of software, I don't believe is doing the job properly. What's more important is that I teach you the concept of pitch shifting and understanding what the concept is. Because if I teach you the idea behind pitch shifting, you can do it on any piece of software in the world. It's just the buttons are going to be in a different place. Whereas if I teach you how to use one program with one set of buttons, You go to a studio somewhere that's got a different program, you can't do anything. So I guess the reason why I said that is my point about sound booths is that I've used a whole bunch of different audio editing programs and I can work out how they all work. And I looked at sound booths and it's like, what is this? It's just really, really different. And I think what it was, frankly, I think sound booths was produced by Adobe, who are used to producing Illustrator and Photoshop and things like that with layers, and they just copied the same format for sound design, not looking at how sound designers work. So I think they dropped the ball on that. So, right, now I wanted to find a sound here. I'll continue to answer questions, but I'm just kind of... Okay, so, got to turn off the loop. Just switch that off. No, just that. Okay, so here we have a beep. All right, so let's just say this is in a, your computer game and you've got your little sort of interface thing. I'm going to do something to this beep first. All right, so now we have our beep. Yeah, that got your attention. Now, if this was in a game, or on your iPad or iPhone or Android phone or whatever, and every time you press the button, you got this. Typing in. Yeah, it's kind of annoying, isn't it? Is this a bad sound? Well, only if it's used in an incorrect context, yeah. Because at this, it's really annoying. Whereas if we go back to where it was, where I actually put it in the library, it might not be a brilliant sound, but it works a lot better when it's at the right volume. And this is one of the other things that a lot of people don't understand. When you're putting musical instruments together, or you're putting sound effects in or whatever, I've had people go, oh, it sounds terrible. It's like, it hasn't been mixed yet. It hasn't had all the different layers put together. It's a work in progress. It's like me asking any of you guys to do artwork for me, and all you've done is like the sketch, and I'm sitting there going, well, that's pretty crap. Well, I haven't finished yet. Let me finish the thing, and then talk to me. It's the same sort of thing with sound as well. You've got to create the sounds, but then you've got to get them mixed in with all the other sounds so they all actually blend together. All right, so that's actually something that's fairly important. So, I'm now going to launch Fmod. Now, because of the resolution of this monitor, it's going to be a little bit squishy, but it should be okay. There's examples. No, Fmod. Has anybody heard of Fmod? You heard of Fmod? Yeah? Where have you heard of it?
I was dealing with a program called My Mod.
Oh, yeah, that's the HRTF thing, I think. The surround sound. Yeah. All right. Fmod is what's called a sound engine. Now, you guys have all... I'm assuming you guys all know the term game engine. So, Unity, Unreal Engine, Crysis Engine. You all understand what a game engine is? All right, so if your game engine is like your operating system, which it kind of is, it's like Windows or Mac OS, what it does is it takes your input and it displays things on the screen and all that sort of stuff. All right, what you've got then is a whole bunch of other things which will function as plugins. So you can have, there are physics plugins. I think Havoc is the name of a physics plugin. And so what it does is it just does all the maths behind the physics for you. So if you've got, walls falling down with real physics applied to them, the Havoc sits there and does all the calculations so that you don't have to write an engine to do all the physics stuff. Sound engines are the same thing. All right, a sound engine basically administers all the sound from the point of view of you putting the sound effects and everything like that. It packages it all up in the right format, but it takes care of things like 3D sound. So if there's a sound being generated by you, and it's fairly loud, but as I walk away, it'll slowly get softer because, of course, there's more distance. So that's what Fmod's doing. It's taking care of all this sort of information. But it also has a tool like this, which allows me to put sounds in. Can we kill these front lights so that the screen can be seen a bit better? Is it easy to just kill those ones there?
Should be a
Button! Yeah, you don't want me to drive that, because I'll find the button that, seals all the doors and brings in the poison gas. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, and then your parents will blame me. Oh, it's all my fault. He triggered the poison gas. God. Always the teacher's fault. All right, so what Fmod does is it allows me to take sound files, whack them in a game. Now, every single one of the sounds I'll probably show you here are from my sound library. So one of the things I'll say is Fmod is free, because the way you use Fmod is if you're going to publish a game, you pay just before you publish. So my sound library is free, Fmod is free. You can do everything that I'm going to do here. All right. Now, what I've got here is this is actually the examples file that comes with Fmod when you download it. So you can actually download Fmod and you can check out the files we're going to have a look at now. So it'll give you a chance to play around with it. FMOD has a bit of a steep learning curve. It's a bit hard to get to understand how to use, because of the way it's laid out and everything like that. So conveniently, my website has some PDF tutorials, and there are also tutorials on YouTube as well for FMOD. So you can find tutorials. So what I'm just going to show you is what happens when you play with some different sounds. Now, did I do the birds one? I think the birds one's over here under the tutorials. Yep, there it is. So, what we have here, that's it. Tiny little bird sound. Lasts for, what was that, a second and a half or something like that. But I've got a bunch of other ones. Okay, so all of these, wait, play. No, so these sounds, these have been dragged into an FMOD project. So to clarify, good question. FMOD does not have any sounds. Okay, so FMOD is basically just a program, and you have to drag sound files from externally. All right, and that's actually a good question, because I have professional people who go, oh, is there a sound library with FMOD? No, there isn't. You've got to get your sounds from somewhere else. In this particular case, I've grabbed them from my own library. Yeah, so it's a source sound. So in this case, basically, I've dumped in a whole bunch of source sounds of birds that I recorded wherever I recorded them. All right, so these are all tiny little individual sounds. All right, and it's like, yeah, okay, that's cool. Now, you guys all understand that if I'm trying to make a game for a console, I've got the limitations of memory. I've got to get things onto the hard drive or onto the disk, and you've got all those problems. When you're making film or television, you don't have those problems. You just whack them out in the film. You can have as many sounds as you want. But with a game, obviously, you're worrying about memory. Now, in here, I think there's, where we got 16 different sound files. Now, these are in OGG format, which means they've been compressed like MP3. So all of those 16 sounds combined in OGG format would probably take up only about a meg. So we've got 1 meg of memory for 16 sounds. So one of the big problems you have when you're playing with a lot of games, when you're trying to produce games, is people are like, oh, look, there's not enough memory. We're making this on iPhone. We don't have enough memory, but we want to have that nice sound of the forest going. So, all right, a decent sound of the forest, maybe a minute long of birds, because otherwise we're going to notice it looping. Minute long, decent quality, that's going to be huge. That's going to take up too much memory. My bird sounds here, they were all 48 kilohertz 16-bit, which is high res, basically DVD quality. They've been put into OGG format. But with FMOD, I put in all the magic numbers in here, which we'll get to in a little bit. But what ends up happening is that it gets all these sounds. And what it's doing is it's basically creating, for me, the whole idea of a forest ambience with birds. One particular species of bird in this case, but that's cool. Now, the interesting thing about that is that we can do what I was talking about before. Remember what I was talking about before with pitch? Let's grab the pitch. Let's drop the pitch down 2 octaves. Oh, we're now somewhere more exotic. We're not in a sort of Queensland forest anymore. We're in the Amazon. So again, we could actually play 2 of those simultaneously and have 2 different species in the forest, etc., etc. So I mean, again, you could go really extreme. I don't think it'll be any good if we go down this far, but yeah, whale song. Or space whales, space dolphins, whatever. Sorry, say again? That's another good analogy. Yeah, you're behind a sheet of glass or something, and you can hear something inside the cage. Yeah, whether it's underwater or not. We can also go up in pitch. So again, remember what we've done with our 1 meg worth of selections of sounds. Crickets, bats, space termites, whatever, So what we've managed to do here, we've managed to produce a whole range of different ambiences from 1 meg worth of raw sound files. Now, what it's actually doing here is it's not doing what's called looping, right? Normally looping, which we were showing you before, it plays the sound, gets the end, goes back. I'm not doing that. What I've done is I've got one of the core things it does is as soon as you put more than 1 sound in there, it goes, oh, there's more than 1 sound in there. So every time I'm triggered, I'm going to randomly draw from that group of sounds. So what it does is it gets rid of the problem that a lot of the old PS2 games and stuff had of there's 2 footstep sounds and you walk, clip, clop, clip, clop, clip, clop, clip, clop, clip, clop, clip, clop. Oh God, it's driving me nuts because it's the same 2 footstep sounds because there's no variation. Whereas if you put in 10 different footstep sounds, it will randomly draw from them. So already you're getting rid of that clip-clop and you're getting a little bit more variation. You then put a teensy-weensy little bit of pitch shifting, pitch variation, and it gives you more variety. All right. So what it's doing here is, I've actually defined for this thing, and I've actually said I don't want you to loop. I want you to do what is called, it's a spawn time parameter, or it's actually also called generative synthesis. What this means is that I say to fmod, I want you to play a sound. Then I want you to count an amount of time. Then I want you to play again. And in this case, because it's triggering a different sound each time, it's doing a little bit of pitch. It's saying, okay, I want you to go and play me a sound and another sound and another sound. Now, do I have the beep one in here? There we go. So here's our beep sound, slightly different one. Okay, so that's our sound, remember, from before? That was our beep sound. But when we put it in here, what we've said is every single I think it's actually every half a second. So it's every 500 milliseconds, play a sound and randomly pitch shift it. And so this one beep becomes... I'm not suggesting that this is a cool sound that you would use for anything, it's just a demonstration. But what it's a demonstration of is that it's continually triggering that sound and it's constantly changing the pitch of it and everything like that. So it's kind of playing a little tune. A bit of a weird little tune, but still. All right, so what you're doing is you are continually, it's kind of like fmod is continuing to hit the play button for you again and again and again and again. But you can randomize how long the time is. So instead of going bing, bong, bang, bong, bong, you can so it's going to go bing, bong, bong, bing, bang, bong, 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 bing, 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 bang, bong, 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 bong. So it's going to randomly choose an amount of time, which any sound that you hear in nature is chaotic. Nature isn't organised. You don't hear things in nature that keep a strict rhythm. Birds, wind in the trees, water dripping, it's generally fairly random. And this is what we've done here. So if we go on to another one that has the idea of, here we've got the idea of randomly drawing from some different ones. This is here, we've got the frog sounds. They are actually different sounds. Subtly, really subtly. But this, when you put in here, now that is the sound of frogs in rice fields in northern Japan. I know because I recorded this sound as well as the individual frogs, so I could match it up to make it work. So what I've done here is with 4 sound files that, seriously, what are we talking, probably 200 kilobytes or something? We're talking the size of a small email. I've just made an ambience that will generate forever. And this is the thing, because I've set it up to grab the sound and then grab another sound, and because it's doing this generative thing, it never loops, it never cycles, it never repeats. If we walk out of this room and come back in a week's time, that will still be playing away, and it will be completely different. All right? Only subtly different, but it doesn't need to be massively different. As long as it doesn't sound exactly the same, your ears will just say to you, yeah, all right, that sounds realistic. That sounds like what I'm expecting it to be. Okay? And in that one, I've got a couple of other ones with cricket doing the same sort of thing. So Australian crickets at night doing whatever they're doing. Again, that's just made from one single sound. In fact, the cricket sound, this is the sound that's made out of. One sound effect. So we're talking 20K or something like that. Sound design stuff. Cool. We'll go somewhere else. And then I did the same thing again with waves. Recorded underwater. I think there was 8 wave sounds. But again, this will just keep randomly generating forever. So there's your underwater game. You're doing Bioshock 5 or whatever. Yo, question. Very good question. What actually is happening here is you're correct. In a 3D game, every sound has a sound source. So if that's where the monster is, you attach the sound to there. What fmod allows me to do is actually randomize from that point around it. So that panning you're hearing here, you're hearing it in stereo. The only reason you're hearing it in stereo is because we only have 2 speakers in here and this is only wired up. That panning is actually in full surround sound. All right, so if you're on PlayStation 3, it'll be in 7.1. If somebody turns around and produces a system that has 20 surround sound speakers, it'll be 20.1 surround sound. Yeah, that's the whole thing about it. fmod is completely future-proof because it's doing true surround. And then it just pipes it out to the sound card or whatever. So yeah, if this whole thing here of the waves, if this was your game underwater, you would have the waves all around your head.
Now, Guys, just a bit of timetable changing around a bit. Stephan won't be moving to R4. He'll be staying here the whole time.
Was I ever moving to R4?
Yeah, that's what I've got you down as. And they keep changing it so many times.
We're staying here.
Staying here. You've got an hour here. At 4:30, the tournament's going to start. Okay. We'll get the games to you a little later. So we'll tell you what they are. But hint, they're right up here. Yeah, the games will be in all 7 rooms. Sorry, 6.
Yeah, except for this pile here, because I'll be taking that with me.
Yeah. Okay, guys. The games will tell you later. Okay. Or you can come up and look up here, but you won't want to do that. Okay, guys. Any other questions?
You said all 6 rooms. What's going on in the 7th?
The 7th room is a chill-out room. We're playing videos. I believe that was actually going to be here. Yeah, that's going to be here. Okay. Anything else? That's back over at the other room, but that's finished already. Okay? No. Okay? Everything from now on is here. Okay? Okay, guys? Quiet. Okay, take it away.
All right, cool.
Can I help you?
To answer your question, you can set up so that the panning works. And in fact, what I've got here, I'll just show you. Oh, actually, can I drag that across? Yes, I can. So here, this is the spawn time values that I was telling you about that randomizes that. Here is the randomized pitch by 3 semitones. Down here is this 3D position. So what I'm saying is from your center point, your spawn point, randomize up to a meter in every direction. So instead of it just being beep, 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 it's beep, 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 boop, boop, beep, beep, boop, all over. So yeah, you can do all sorts of, and again, that plays into what I was talking about before of the chaos and the randomness is one of the things you really need. Yo.
What fast does F1 export hours? Because typically Joe import this as a WAV file into like the Unreal Engine, for example.
So can I make the sound in Fmod and then export it into a file format that I can use somewhere else? Yes, you can. So what you've got under Fmod is you've got the audition function, and you see that, right? So it says set record directory. So you set the directory you want it to put in, and then you press, and then you put it on record output. And when you do record output, and you go over here, see how this is recording? If I press play now, it'll spit out a file that will be called examples/tutorials/ sound def tutorial blah 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 blah. Now, one of the things with doing that, so yes, you can record the output. It will record the output at whatever your computer's default setting is under Windows for sound recording. So you'll need to go into your sound settings and make sure it's not set to something awful like 8 kilobytes, 8-bit sound awful yug. Yeah. So make sure your sound card's not set to the awful setting, which some of them by default seem to be. I really don't understand why, but anyway. All right, so there's some examples of the sort of things from single sounds you can get. Now, remember I was talking to you about the sort of pitch shifting stuff, etc. Now, if we go into here I've got the sound of an explosion. So I've just called it mine, as in landmine going boom. And what we've got is we've got all these multiple different layers in here, and I'm going to go in and start and have a look at this. Now, this is, remember what we were doing before with our pitch shifting. Here's a shotgun. Fairly standard, all right? But again, if you're trying to save memory or whatever, you've got your shotgun, and you've got your shotgun as we just played it. But if we put the shotgun down by an octave, it's getting a little bit more grenade-like at that sort of level. You go down sort of 2 octaves. Sorry, say again. Yeah, well, it says there, as you get lower and lower and lower, it gets, yes, the spaceship's having a bad day. But my point is that, again, if you would make it, think about it this way. If you're trying to make your own game with a friend and you're doing this on iPhone, don't have a sound for the grenade and a sound for the shotgun. Don't waste memory by using 2 sound files when you could use 1. You could have 1 sound file in there. You could basically have the shotgun so that it randomizes. Okay, let's go back to the core shotgun sound. Let's put it back up to 0. All right. Now, I would personally normally have, as you can see here, I'd have 3. That gives me a little bit more variation. But even if you only had 1 sound and you had this pitch randomization, it means that each time it's going to be just that little bit different. Question? Yep. Well, okay, what I'm showing you, okay, see here, see how I have a play button here and I have a play button here. You guys can see that. This play button here, these here are the sound files. These are the sound files in their raw format. So if I press the button here, that is the sound file exactly as I recorded it. No alteration at all. And when you go over here, right, this is basically all the alterations. So all these numbers here I change, and when I press here, okay, so that's randomly choosing from those 3 files. So this one is what's called the sound def. All right, so that's what you'll hear in Fmod. If you've basically got Fmod linked up. All right, now if you so this is why you would use Fmod, because Fmod can do all these things for you in real time. If you weren't going to use Fmod and you just wanted to basically output a WAV file to use somewhere else, you'd have to do that recording thing that I showed you before. So you would then basically do that, or you could just put it into Audacity or Adobe Audition and pitch shift it down and get the same effect there. Is that what you wanted to know? If I haven't clarified it, then
Yeah, like in the game.
yeah.
You have the sound, but like you said, they lose. So it's random in the game.
Well, no. Okay, in the game it will.
With the water before,
Yeah.
that's all different.
Yeah.
Would it be like that in the game?
Yes.
Would it be
No, that's the whole point. What it does is, what I'm showing you here is that Fmod is going, play this one, and then play this one, and then play this one, and then play this one. That's exactly what it does in game. Okay, so in game, what Fmod does is it loads up all the individual little sound files, and it has them sitting there in memory. And when I say play that wave one, it goes, cool, I need this one, then I need this one, then I need this one, or pitch shift that one, and I need this. And it actually assembles them in real time. So that's what it's doing. It's generating the sounds it needs in real time. So it will sound, obviously, you know, every time I press play here, it's slightly different, but you know what I mean. It'll be consistent with what you're hearing here. Question?
So do you set up all the variation in sound in Fmod, or would you input that information during gameplay?
No. What I do is I'm defining this. Okay, so all these values that I'm doing over here, all these numbers that I'm putting in here, when I export to Fmod, what Fmod does is it basically gets the sound files it needs and whacks them into what effectively is a zip file, it's a special Fmod zip file, it's called an FSB, and then it basically gets all these numbers and whacks them in a text file. So in the game, you load up the game and it goes, there's the sound files, there's the text file, and then you press the button in the game that goes, fire the grenade launcher, and Fmod goes, cool, grenade launcher needs one of those 3 sounds, pitch shift, pitch shift, pitch shift, there's your sound. Except it doesn't like that.
Are you able to actively change those values as well?
What do you mean by actively change?
So let's say during the game, suddenly for some reason I need to make the pitch shift less. Am I able to actively change that?
Yep, and I'm going to get onto that right now. So yes, you can. So after a couple of questions, yeah.
let's say you're in a game in, let's say, a war field, and there would be a difference in the sound that you get from, say, a grenade 10 meters from you and a grenade from 50.
So I want to be able to filter the sound for distance and whether it's behind a wall and all that sort of stuff.
So is there like different files for different distances, or?
There can be. There doesn't have to be. Hold that thought. We'll get to that in a minute as well. Any more questions before I move on to the next bit? Yes. Yeah.
What about like Doppler effect, like stuff like moving parts?
Fmod automatically does Doppler. It will look at something, and as long as the coders have actually applied a velocity to it, i.e. a speed, and you're standing still and it zooms past you, Fmod will go, it should sound like this. Or Fmod automatically does Doppler. Yes. Yes. Why is sound underappreciated? We'll get to that. Make sure I don't forget that. I'll probably talk about that a little bit as we go on. All right, but I think sound appreciation is improving. Is it still underappreciated in some cases? Absolutely yes. And I'll get to why in a second.
How many sounds, for example, do at once? I know some programs can end up capping the number of sounds and create issues. Can you layer hundreds of sounds at once?
Okay, let me ask you this. I'm going to answer that question by asking you a question. If you go to, I don't know, let's say the football, all right, and at that point in the football, let's say we've got 50,000 people in the audience, and we actually hand out to every single person in the audience a piece of paper that says a word, and on the count of 3, everybody has to yell out their word. All right, and you're just sitting there. Doesn't matter where you're sitting. You can be sitting anywhere. are you going to hear every single word that is being yelled out? Why not? And I haven't listened to anybody. Why are we not going to hear every single sound?
Most of the sound will be drowned out or knocked off battleground sounds coming in.
Yeah. So maybe.
A sound 500 meters away won't travel as far.
Yeah, so the sound that's 500 metres away may not travel as far, or it actually might, but by the time it gets here, the guy next to you, the big guy next to you is going, "Mummy!" It's so loud that you don't hear the person over there that's yelled out whatever they've yelled out.
If you've got 50,000 words, you imagine it's too much sensory input.
That as well, too much sensory input. What else? So yep.
Your brain can only pick it up at they you can hear all the words at the same time. It also needs to fire and discover that.
Yeah, at a certain point it becomes white noise.
Yeah.
So what the reality is if there's a battle going on, it's a whole bunch of sounds going on. Realistically, you're probably only really paying attention to a few of them anyway. Now, what Fmod does do, Fmod can play hundreds of sounds simultaneously, but what it actually does do is it has a priority system, and it actually has various different levels within the priority system. So the first thing you can do is you can basically say, your sound's priority 1, your sound's priority 2. So if you two talk at the same time, and I'm only allowing one sound, so his sound is a higher priority, so his one's going to go first, right? The next thing you can do is, well, all right, you're now both priority 1. However, I've set up another parameter that says steal the oldest sound, or steal the quietest sound, or steal the sound that's furthest away, going with what you were talking about before. So now, you're both screaming at the same time, and you're both priority 1, but you started before he did, so his sound's more important. Or maybe you're further away, so his sound's more important. Because what this means is, think about it this way, going back to the battlefield situation, whoever suggested it, right? I'm standing here, you're standing next to me, and we're shooting the bad guys, and you're standing there with your gun going bang, 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 bang. There's some guy over there that's fallen over and gone, ugh. Am I going to hear the guy going, ugh, with him sitting here going bang, bang, bang? You know what I mean? And so what you're getting is all these different layers of stuff going on. And so you can set up the priorities for however you want it to work. So I can actually say, your sound is so far away that I won't hear it if there's other things playing. However, if there aren't other things playing, okay, everybody stops shooting, but you're still over the back going, you're going bang, 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 but all I'm getting is this bang, 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 bang. What's going on over there? Because I can now hear it because everybody else has stopped making noise. So now I can see, and I say, hey, shoot here. Right? So you've got all these things, and this is how it works in real life. You're really not going to matter about a sound that's 1,000 miles away if there's a hand grenade going off in front of you. Right? And this is how Fmod does it. What it does is it tries to do it in a realistic way. It's looking at it going, you will care about the sounds that are immediately around you now, less so about the sound over there, unless the sound over there is something that has a higher priority, and we've given it a higher priority because it happens to be one of your teammates who's yelling out duck, and these are actually all ducks, right? So instead of being worried about the ducks going quack, you're worrying about your friend saying duck and getting confused about what he's yes, there's ducks everywhere, whatever, you know. So it does have its limits because you can't have, but generally what the limits are actually come down to quite often is things like CPU processing power. Sure, play 20,000 sounds at once and watch your Xbox melt. Could be. That's actually a really, really good question. All right, for those of you who didn't hear it, the question was, do I believe in creating sounds that are super realistic or sounds that people can more relate to? To give you an example, there was I can't remember which one it was. It was like one of the Need for Speed games or something like that they did a few years back. They brought out a game, and for the beta testing, they brought it out, and they'd spent tens of thousands of dollars of recording Ferraris and Porsches and all this sort of stuff. And they had a whole bunch of the play testers went, yeah, we don't like the sound of that. I'm like, what do you mean you don't like the sound of that? It's a real Ferrari. Like, we spent a week recording a real Ferrari. And they said, we don't care. We don't like the sound of it. And they ended up like mixing it in with something like a Mack truck or something to make it sound beefier. Because a lot of people are used to watching Hollywood films. And Hollywood and realism, like long way apart. I mean, like one of my favourite guns ever in any movie is the original Raiders of the Lost Ark. Indy's revolver sounds like a howitzer. Real guns don't sound like that. I wish they did. It'd be fun. But I mean, he pulls this thing out. It's like, boom! And I'm like, Jeez. And this is the whole point. Like sometimes, to answer that question, I would say it really depends on the context. Am I playing a super duper realistic game, or am I playing something where my sidekick is a purple squid that's 12 feet tall? Hey Fred, and it's like, at that point in time, it's all about entertainment. You know what I mean? And in some cases, super realistic, it's like, well, where do you get the super realistic? I mean, super realistic Star Wars, we're in space. No sound. Kind of dull. Although, actually, Firefly did a pretty good job of that. They actually had it silent in space for fun. Was there a question there? Yeah?
I was just wondering, I feel like you're kind of cheating by recording like all 18,000 sounds and then realizing you can actually make another sound as this sound and then obviously it's record that and like which do you prefer you still need to record that sound or can you just like mix it add another sound?
So hang on, so you saying I'm cheating by...
No. Do you feel like you're kind of cheating by like if you made that box and you made a 44-gallon drum sound, you need to go out and record a 44-gallon drum.
I would say, and actually it's a good one because I want to answer this. All right. Let me find Stone Small. I think this one works fairly well. All right, here's an example. Let's try this one. I don't know if this will be good or not. That one's not great. Stones. Oh, that's what I want. Yep, here you go. This is perfect. Okay, so you know those Besser bricks, the grey ones? You build parks and gardens and stuff out of? That's this. Just one dragged across the top of the other one. All right? Now, am I cheating, recording stuff like that? Do I feel like I'm cheating? Well, the reality sometimes can be this sort of thing. I'm just picking a number here, so I don't know if this is going to work or not. All right, so that's the pyramid tomb door being open, or something similar. Now, from this point of view, what's the reality of me going out and recording the sound of a 5-ton slab of stone being dragged? So this is the thing. Sometimes what it comes down to is I will, if I can record something, and if I can record the real thing, I will, right? And if it comes down to something that's recognisable, and I'm going to find... no, oi, don't do that. Yeah. Thank you. I guess what it depends on is what you're going, what the purpose is of your sound. I generally, if I can go out and I can record a shotgun, I will go out and record a shotgun. If I've been given a project and they say, oh, well, we need an MP5. Australia, access to MP5s. No. What am I going to do? I'm either going to go to somebody else's library who's got an MP5, or if it's not supposed to be a super realistic thing. Sorry? Exactly. I might make it. So there are certain sounds which obviously I have to make. It's a magic game and there's a fireball. Sure, I got one right here. No, I can't do that. So obviously I've got to make that. So generally what I'll do is I will try and create a sound that is as close to perfect as I can get it from the point of view of, does it fulfill... Oh, I didn't put them in there. Bummer. No, I was actually looking for the Spitfire, which I don't actually... So my library, that's a good question. My library actually has two sorts of categories. Well, probably more than that, but generally I have a whole bunch of sounds called created. The first thing is created _ whatever. And these are sounds that I've built or manipulated or made. And in some cases, one of the reasons why I've done those is, even though I'm giving you all the individual components to make your own explosion sound, if you're working on a project and your boss sort of says, this is going to be done by the end of the day, are you going to start playing around with trying to make an explosion sound, or are you just going to go to the library and go, explosion, that one, done? Some people don't have the time or the inclination to make their own sounds. So I'm actually trying to cater to both. But I'm very much trying to give you the raw materials to make your own sounds, so you can produce your own explosion sound if you want to. That's the one I want. Now in this particular case, this is the sort of sound where this, would I try to manufacture this? No. You don't manufacture sounds like that without an awful lot of effort. You know, that basically is a Mustang, a World War II Mustang fighter plane flying about 100 feet above my head, right? And that's the sort of thing where that's the sort of sound you can't replicate. If somebody sort of said, oh, we need a game with a Mustang in it, and I didn't have the recordings, I'd be like, you need to talk to somebody else, or we need to go out and buy a library. You know what I mean? Whereas if somebody says, oh, we need a blaster, you know, or a laser gun or something like that, I would manufacture it, or I would alter something else. So I guess it's kind of hard. Like I will generally in some cases manipulate sounds. If I had the sounds of the insects, like the frogs, that giant file is no good to use in a computer game. So cutting down the 4 little frog sounds and turning them into the looping thing that's an implementation thing, rather than sort of like, you know, that sort of stuff. So most cases I would say to you, I will try to get the real sound and put it in, rather than manufacture a sound. And I will manufacture a sound when I think I might get an interesting or unusual effect. Yep.
So keeping on that train of thought, how much of your library is manufactured rather than just going out and being recorded?
Actually, it's quite a good question. And let's have a look. So currently in this folder here, okay, there are 18,000 sounds, 18,021 sounds in this folder. If we just quickly, it's currently about 20 gig, I think. I think it's a bit over 20 gig at the moment, cartridges. So I'm actually looking, if I do this, there we go. No, CRE. All right, so that's the beginning of the created ones, all right? So if we continue to scroll all the way down, created. Now this is the main bulk. There you go. There's 1,000 sounds there that are created. There are also some other ones that are under the thing of manipulated. There's also things that are called Foley. Now Foley is an interesting one. Have you guys heard the term Foley? Yeah. All right, Foley is actually named after a guy called, I can't remember his first name actually. Guy called Foley, who in the like 1930s or something worked for the Hollywood, and he was the guy that basically started the whole thing of like, you know, we've got a film and we need a horse, 2 coconuts, clip clop, clip clop, clip clop. Foley is all about producing sounds from something that is slightly unreal. All right, so Foley is, for instance, I've got a whole bunch of sounds in here because like called body falls, of, you know, like I club you over the head and you go kaplonk on the ground. And I know people who've tried throwing themselves at the ground to get a decent sound. It doesn't work. I ended up getting a bag, filling it full of boots and kicking that around, and you get this good sort of thumpy clunk sound. So in this case, these are sort of created sounds because it's not the real sound of a body hitting the ground, but what it is the sound that you guys can use that's probably better than if you did get the real sound of a body hitting the ground. So that's also a created sort of sound, and it falls into that category. I would say that the created sounds in the library are probably less than a third. That's just a figure off the top of my head. You know. All right, we're going to go back to Fmod. So, whoops! I hit the wrong icon. I hate that. I've got my Fmod icon, which is blue, right next to my Eve icon, which is blue. No, I have to wait until it opens so I can then close it. No, I can't. I've got no network in here. Go away. That's the icon I want. Hey? When I play games, I try not to analyse them too much. I just want to enjoy them. Same way when I watch a film. I just shut off and I become a fanboy for a couple of hours. If the film sucks, afterwards I'll go, yeah, it wasn't so great. If the film's great, I'll rave about it afterwards. But in the film, I just switch off. I want to be a fanboy. When the heroes start to win, I want to go, yeah. I want to enjoy it. I don't want to be, you know, sitting and analysing a film while you're watching it for the first time. No, okay. I don't automatically. Okay, okay, the things that do automatically happen. There's about 3 or 4 sounds that Hollywood just need to stop using. One of them is a camel. They go, that gets used over and over again for everything. The Wilhelm scream gets used as a tribute, but still gets overused. And there's that bloody hawk that they use every time we show a desert. I just say, oh God, this bird probably lives in one remote little corner of the world, and it gets represented for anywhere we're going to use it. The what? Yeah. All right, so I'm just going to go back here. So here's our metal box again. Remember our metal box? Now our metal box has been played around with to do that, and we've got our shotgun blast, and we've got some metal fragments and some other things, and we combine them all together into what is our mine explosion sound. So the last time I was showing this off, I put some extra sounds on the shotgun one, and they're still there. Give me a sec. Is that the shotgun blast? Trigger delay. Spawn time maximum play 1. No, that's fine. Maybe it's in that one. All right, something weird going on there. Ignore those extra bangs that go happen afterwards. But what you've got with this is an explosion that every single time I press play, it's different. Because what it's doing is it's combining the boom and the crash and the debris and everything like that, so that it's bringing those bits together in real time, like I was saying before. It just grabs the bits it needs. So if we go to here, these were made, okay, all the raw materials here. I do actually have an underwater microphone, but you can. I know people who do underwater recording. Now you guys are going to laugh at this, which, but you know, basically you get just a standard Shure microphone. Shure is a common brand of microphone that people use for band gigs and stuff like that. Just a normal everyday vocal microphone, and you put a condom over it, and you put an elastic band around it, and it protects the microphone enough to be able to drop it in the water. Be really careful if you're going to try that, but you can actually do under recording that way. The other one I did, that little sound recorder I showed you guys before, I had one of those up at Noosa. I put it in a Ziploc lunch bag and went swimming with it. So, as I said, be careful. But all these sounds were recorded basically with me. I had a bicycle pump that I put underwater and just pumped air through it. I had a bucket put under with water in it and it tipped it up so the bubbles that came out. And I got like a heavy weight and threw it in the water to get a splashing sound and combine all those together for underwater explosion sort of sound. So, you know, that has been made with a whole bunch of bubbles. And combining all those sounds, and every time it's just slightly different, etc., etc. All right, now what we're going to do is talk about a whole bunch of stuff. Because of the resolution here, I'm going to have to crunch all of these up. Here we have a whole ton of layers with a whole bunch of things going on. And I'm just going to scrunch some of them up. Now, this is a multi-track event. This is where FMOD allows you to combine tons and tons and tons of sounds and layers all together. And somebody was asking before, can these things be changed on the fly? Well, I'm about to show you exactly how they're changed on the fly. And somebody else asked, can you make things sound different for different distances and stuff? Now, one of the questions was, would you have a different recording for something recorded at a distance? Potentially, yes, you might. It depends on what you're doing. So these are all scrunched up, and you've got a lot of things going on here. Now, this is actually, I created this for the FMOD guys, and it's in the download example file, so you can check it out. They wanted something that was sort of showing off what FMOD could do. So I went, okay, cool. I'm going to build an environment. So this is one event. So normally in the game would just say, play this sound, and it's called submarine environment. And it would just trigger it and switch it on. You've then got these things up here, which are parameters, and these are the things that change in real time. All right, so these are the things that you can shift and change. So these are the values that the programmer would basically say, okay, change the value from 1 to 6 or whatever. So the submarine has 3 parameter properties. The top one is location. This refers to your physical location within the submarine. So I've given the submarine 5 rooms. One where you're up in the tower, so you got your head out the top of the submarine, you can see the ocean around you. One when you're down in the control room, you know, where all the instruments are. One which is like the generator battery room. One's just like the bunk bed room, and then there's the engine room. Okay, so we can move between those 3 locations. Then the other parameter is speed, how fast the submarine's going, and depth. All right, so we press start on this, and we are up in the tower with our head sticking outside the top. Submarine's not moving anywhere because our speed is set to 0, and depth is set to 0, which is on the surface. Is that how it starts all the time? No, you could set the parameters for it to start wherever you wanted to. Okay? Okay, so we are basically there. Another question?
So in relation to programming, you set triggers, so when you select the option, it will change the
All sorts of things. You can set triggers so that's basically like, if this happens, set the parameter to that. So basically, let's say we've got the shotgun. Bang, 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 parameters, I've only got 2 bullets left. Bang, bang, parameters empty, click. So the code has said, the gun has now run out of bullets, tell FMOD that it's basically now on parameter 0, i.e. out of bullets, and therefore FMOD goes, okay, I don't play the bang sound, I play the click sound, because I'm out. So yeah, you can set up that set of stuff. All right, so we're back in the submarine. water all around us again. This would be surround sound. All of us are surround sound. And we are up here, and we want to go down into the control room. So we're going to go down to the control room. And our communications guy is kind of excited. He's telling everybody he's having a fun day, doing Morse code. So we're going to move through to the next room. Not much going on in this room, just the hum of the generator. However, if we come back here, you can hear the guy in the other room through the door. Because we get close to the door, we've got our ear up against the door. But it's not quite clear, it's all muffled. Right, so these green lines, can you see these green lines that are all up through here? These green lines are a property called occlusion. Occlusion is basically saying, masking the sound because there is something between me and the sound. And the level of occlusion set is how much is between me. Is it one door? Is it two doors? Is it a stone wall? Yeah, so you can basically have, you could have your occlusion set so it's just you got a piece of paper next to your head, so it's really, really minor. But as we move further away, you're moving away from the sound and the occlusion and all that sort of stuff. And you can hear the buzz of the battery room or whatever. And now we're in the bunk room. I put a clock. What else? I was trying to find things. What in the submarine makes noise? I've actually been up to the one up in Sydney at the Maritime Museum, and I walked through it, and there's not much that makes noise. So, all right. So now we're going to go through into the engine room. Oh yeah, the engine's not working because we're not going anywhere. So we should probably get the speed happening. So let's bring the speed up a little bit. And the engine will start to come to life. Let's have a look at the engine for a minute. Now, same sort of idea of what I showed you before, where I've got a sound definition with a whole bunch of sounds in them, except this time they're very different. So it's randomly grabbing steam, clunky bit, whir sound, and it's just grabbing them and 3D, throwing them all around you as well. These would be like surround sound all around your head. As the submarine increases in speed, the engine's going to roll over. Gets less and less as we move further down the submarine and get further away from the actual engine. Communication guys are still very, very excited. Let's actually go up on deck. We're still above the water. Okay, the water is now rushing past the submarine because we're not static anymore. However, if we slow the submarine down and bring it to a halt, water calms down because it's not moving past the boat so fast. Question?
And it's moving fast enough, can you make it that only if it's moving fast enough you get like splash before sometimes water?
Yeah, you could do that. You could have things like random splashes in the face. You could have the sound of the wind coming in the faster you move. Yep.
What happens if you keep the location the same, so I'm up there, but then you increase the depth?
Ah, so you're saying what happens if I'm keeping my head out the top of the submarine when we actually go to dive? All right, well, let's... So, all right, so what's happening is this. We're moving a little bit, not much, right, and we're in this location. And, okay, so now we're actually we want to dive down. Now, I didn't actually add the sound of waves underwater. I'm working on the assumption that you've gotten your head inside the submarine and closed the door. So you're now in that bit in the tower with the door closed. However, the hull is creaking a little bit. And in fact, I think if we get not too deep, I think just under the surface. Yeah, you can kind of hear the water rushing past when you get close to the surface. But once you get down underneath, it's more into things bumping off the hull, and that's our box again, by the way. That's our famous box. Now that we're actually under the water, however, our communications guy's given up because his aerial's gotten wet, so he can't do Morse code anymore. However, we have our little sonar that's telling us how close to the bottom we are. So if we actually decide to go deeper, we're getting closer and closer to the bottom. And the hull starting to creak a little bit. Things not going so well. And now we're dragging along the bottom of the thing, basically. So yeah, let's not do that. Alright, so basically within this one thing, we have the ability to have... alright, one of the other things I just want to show you is... Where's the engine? We need to be on, I think it's location. Alright, now, on this particular one here, if you can see it... No, I need to do that, and I need to do that. Alright, so this is the engine one. So we'll go back to our engine here, and we'll have our speed there. Our depth doesn't really matter. Now, have a listen to this. I'm just going to solo this. So this is the engine. Let it wind up because it takes a little bit of a second to start up. All right. So this is our engine sort of chugging away. Now, at the moment, as I mentioned before, it's fully 3D around you. It has this sort of thing. But as soon as we move out the door, see this pink line? This pink line is what's called 3D panning. I'm just going to stop that for a second. What 3D panning does is it basically says, when it's on full, it says, yep, this is full 3D, you are in amongst it. You are in amongst all these things. As soon as we set the 3D panning down to the other end, what it's actually done is it said, I've walked out the door of the engine room, and I've closed the door to the engine room. The engine sound now has a distinct location. It's over there. Think of it this way. You get a car, any car, open up the bonnet, and turn it on so it's running and idling. As soon as you lean in, it's kind of like, oh, I can hear the fans kind of there, and the cylinders are over there, and I can hear that bit over there. You know what I mean? You can hear bits here, there, and everywhere. But if you walk away from the car, there's one sound source of the car, it's over there. So what it's actually happening is as you get further away from something, same with the birds in a tree, the birds I played with you before, you do the same thing with that. If I'm standing, there's the trunk of the tree, and you've got the whole canopy of the tree, and there's birds there, it's going to sound like they're just all around me. But again, as I move away from the tree, you get one location in space. Alright, so what you can do is you can control all of these sorts of things. You can control whether an explosion sounds like boom, you're in the middle of it and it's all around you, or it's over there and it's boom. And in fact, it's over there behind a building, boom, you know, because of the whole occlusion thing going on. Or it's over there, 500 metres on the other side of that hill, and all you're hearing is a low rumble. So FMod can calculate a lot of this stuff for you. Question?
So, let's say you were next to a car, and then you move away from it. How would you change that into sound? How would you go about making the difference between 1 metre and 50 metres?
There's a couple of things. You'd probably need, to be really accurate, you'd probably need a few things. You would need to have that, so from 3D down to 2D stuff. You'd also probably need to actually have some filters going on, because I don't know how much you guys know about sound, and I'm not going to go into a huge sort of discussion about it, but generally, low frequencies travel further. The wavelength is much further, and it'll just travel further. So generally, if you hear something like thunder, I don't know if you guys have ever paid attention, when you hear thunder and you hear this kind of like, if thunder happens directly above your head, it sounds like all hell has broken loose. In fact, I'll find you, I think I've got a good recording of thunder that I recorded that was literally above my head. And it's all high frequency stuff. It's this loud sort of crack. It sounds a lot like a phone. Thunder, really loud, sounds a lot like a phone. Now let me just find the... I think it's this one. this one as well. So thunder at a distance is this sort of thing. It's just a low rumble. But it's not that the sound over there is different. It's that by the time the sound gets to you, that's what it sounds like. The person who's standing underneath the thunder, that's what they're hearing. Really high-pitched crack sort of sound. It's just that by the time you're 5 miles away, that crack just sounds like... Because all the high frequencies just kind of faded.
How did you record the thunder close?
How did I record the thunder close? Basically, I was quite lucky in that I spent about 12 months working for a studio in the Melbourne CBD, and they were on the top floor and they had access to the roof space, and anytime there was a storm, I just stood up from my desk and walked outside. And one day there was a really, you know how Melbourne sometimes gets those really vicious thunderstorms? I was standing outside with a little recorder, and that sound went off, and I was like, oh yes, thank you. Yeah, so that basically. All right, so enjoy the rest of your week.